Hey, Rebel Rouser. I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7 by 7. We're at episode number 1582, and, you know, I've been wanting to talk about this for a while, because actually I'm a little surprised at what's been happening online as regards Star Wars Episode 9. You know, one of the things that I have always admired the Making Star Wars folks for in Star Wars Newsnet is that even though they trade in rumors and leaks and spoilers and they're actively seeking this information out, both of those sites and the people who run them are rather scrupulous about putting out headlines that do not reveal what it is that they are talking about. In other words, if you are spoiler averse, for example, then if you happen to see a MakingStarWars.net headline or a Star Wars Newsnet headline somewhere on social media, you're not going to know what the rumor or the leak or the spoiler is just by the headline. I mean, you might get an idea about what it might be overall about, but you're not actually going to get the rumor or the leak or the spoiler in the headline. And they've always encouraged people to be circumspect with the stuff that they post. Like, if you're sharing any of our stories, don't share what the actual rumor, leak, or spoiler is in the substance of whatever it is that you're putting out there. The reason I bring this up is because, you know, as part of what I do for the podcast, I'm, going over Star Wars news alerts and whatnot. And more I've seen for episode 9 a lot of spoiler type headlines. And these are all still rumors and leaks and spoilers, and who knows whether they're true or not. Funnily enough, it's the stuff that I'm seeing on places where I don't usually see rumors and leaks and spoilers being reported. These are not actually things that are being shared out from the major spoiler sources, the ones that have proven themselves to really be on, the mark with these things, like Making Star Wars, like Star Wars Newsnet. Usually it was the case that those stories were just getting reshared by other outlets, but now it's more like, I don't know, people are looking at Reddit for possible rumors, and who knows how reliable those might be. I mean, they're not really sourced the way normal media sources are vetted or anything like that. So, it's as if a lot of media outlets have decided, well, everybody wants to know more about the Star Wars movies, and everybody wants to know what's going to happen in them. And so we're just going to put the spoilers out right in the headlines, regardless of whether they might actually be true, regardless of whether anybody really wants to know them if they are true. And it's kind of getting a little bit out of hand, and it's rather disappointing in a way. But I think one of the things that you might be able to console yourself with, if you're feeling at all the same way that I'm feeling about this, if you're sick of hearing things like, this original trilogy character is appearing in episode 9, but they're actually telling you who the original trilogy character is, or the prequel trilogy character, or whoever it is, or, here's the latest thing about Rey's parents, if it hasn't been settled already. Anyway, I was reading an article about Game of Thrones, the final season that's coming out in the spring of 2019. And it's the cover story for Entertainment Weekly coming up. And of course, they interviewed Benioff and Weiss. And because they, of course, are working on Star Wars stuff, or will be after Game of Thrones is over, they haven't quite gotten that going. And that's okay, because they've kind of had a few other things to be managing. But part of the interview with Benioff and Weiss in the Entertainment Weekly piece talked about how to maintain secrecy for this final season of Game of Thrones, how they could do whatever they possibly could to avoid any spoilers getting out, any leaks or rumors. And as part of that, and as part of the fact that they are coming into the Star Wars fold, I guess they had conversations with Rian Johnson and Kathleen Kennedy about maintaining secrecy. And according to Benioff and Weiss, they said that they learned things from Johnson and Kennedy that they had never heard of before, had never even thought of before. Or even, as D.B. Weiss put it, things that they didn't even think were possible. So that fact, being put into action with Game of Thrones, well, that certainly suggests that it's working. Whatever it is that they recommended is definitely working, because Game of Thrones, there hasn't really been anything leaked about Game of Thrones whatsoever. There's been very little. And as far as, episode 8, The Last Jedi, well, there were leaks and rumors and things getting out here and there, but it was definitely less than what was out there for The Force Awakens. And you imagine that they can only improve upon this over time. And so that we will probably get to the point where it's going to be even better for episode 9, that it is already even better for episode 9. And just looking at the last month or so of stuff on Making Star Wars and on Star Wars Newsnet, the places where you would expect to see a legitimate rumor or leak or spoiler, the amount of stories that they've had over the last little while, even though filming is actually going on for episode 9 right now, the volume is actually really down, and it just makes me think that, whatever it is that Rian Johnson and Kathleen Kennedy were talking to D.B. Weiss and David Benioff about, those sorts of things, it's legit, and they are perfecting the practice of keeping the lid on things. And I'm sure that, within the whole Disney, giant conglomerate, I'm sure that they're sharing things back and forth with the folks at Marvel, who probably have a little bit of a stake in keeping things secret as well, especially with everything going on for Avengers 4 and all that stuff. So anyway, I think ultimately, despite the fact that you're probably going to be seeing more and more news stories that claim to be revealing things about episode 9, ultimately it's probably a bunch of bunk, and that, you might be able to relax and not worry too much about things that you might see in headlines that shouldn't even be in headlines in the first place. But anyway, that, my friends, is what I wanted to chat with you about as part of a non-spoiler discussion about spoilers, or potential spoilers at the very least. And that is going to do it for this episode. I hope you will subscribe to the show so that way you get the next episode and the next without you even having to think about it. It'll just show up for you. And I hope you'll support my one-man enterprise to bring you a daily dose of Star Wars joy by supporting the show on Patreon at patreon.com/SW7X7. For now, though, it just remains for me to say, as always, thank you so much for joining me for this episode, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
This podcast is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2018 Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it!